Summer is upon us, and with things getting back into full swing, get-togethers, travel, things come up, and it's not only in relation to food with AIP, there's also the lifestyle factors, as well as managing our emotions or our mental health while we're navigating this diet. And today's topic was inspired by a trip I took recently. I went away for 3 nights with my family. We stayed in a shared accommodation with 5 other families, and we all have kids, at least one kid under the age of 5. So part of the plan was to have communal meals where one family would cook at each meal and the other families would get a break. And of course, being on now in my life a modified version of AIP, I knew that I wouldn't be able to eat all of the food options, and I would have to do some planning and preparing to kind of fend for myself. But I have to say that planning and preparing for AIP meals is only half the battle. Getting into the right frame of mind is also so vitally important. No one wants to feel different or like they're missing out on what the rest of the crowd is doing. And I didn't want thoughts like these to prevent me from having a good time on my vacation. So the question really is, how can you enjoy a summer of socializing or any time of the year? Maybe it's around Christmas time or around the holidays while you're on AIP or some version of the paleo diet, whatever that looks like for you right now. And today I want to break this down into 3 categories: diet, lifestyle, and mindset. So I want to start with diet because when it comes to AIP, especially at the beginning, when you're first getting started with the diet, the what to eat part is the main focal point. And although AIP does encompass the lifestyle approach as well, the dietary changes can have such a huge impact and sometimes quite quickly on how we feel. So having done the elimination diet myself 3 times, here are the top 5 things I've learned. The first is be responsible for your own food. So in other words, expect that you'll have to fend for yourself. And what I mean by this is that society is not set up to cater to us AIPers. It is wise to have a backup plan, to always carry some type of non-perishables with you, whether that is like beef jerky sticks or freeze-dried fruit or whatever it is that you have access to. Have that in your bag or in your purse or in your car, and bring a meal with you if you are going out for more than a few hours. I have found that when people try to prepare AIP foods for me, they end up adding at least one ingredient that is not AIP approved. And then I feel even worse saying no because they've put in that extra effort, especially for me. So depending on how close you are with your relationship, you might just want to bring your own food. But at the end of the day, my main motto is honesty is the best policy. And by that, I mean being open and honest in your communication with your needs to the people around you is easier than actually beating around the bush or like walking on eggshells. So now, and yes, it has taken me years to get to this point where I feel comfortable voicing what is coming to mind for me, but it's a work in progress. The second tip is to take that time to plan and prepare. And this is going to look different depending on the situation. So whether it's a picnic or a wedding or some kind of longer travel by air or by boat, whatever it is, here are a few tips. The first is to eat a nourishing meal before you go, something that will sustain you for at least a few hours. And I know this one sounds so obvious, but if you're taking like an early morning flight, there is more to it. You have to set that alarm earlier. You need to make sure that there's something already prepared and ready to eat. The second is to look at menus and call restaurants in advance with your questions, especially if you're going with a big group and the waiter or waitress isn't going to have a lot of time to talk to you individually. If you call in advance, you can sort things out ahead of time. Same thing goes with speaking to a host or a hostess about party or event details ahead of time so that you can plan accordingly. One thing I love doing is contributing to the meal by bringing an AIP compliant dish. And I know a lot of us are fans of casseroles. I know casseroles used to have kind of like a negative connotation, like they were gross or something, but there are so many really great AIP casseroles where you can add your protein, your starch, your vegetables all in one place. So at least you know you're getting all of the components of the meal so that you're satisfied. And choosing a restaurant or activity that works for you with where you are at on your AIP journey. So if you're a total newbie and you're in the elimination phase, it might make sense to avoid food-related activities that are outside of the home, at least for a little while. An attitude that I have adopted over time, and this wasn't right at the beginning, was to focus on what I can eat rather than what I can't eat. Because every time I heard those words, I can't have, go through my brain, I felt really crappy. And also eating foods that I enjoy. So what I like to tell my clients is think of all of your favorite meals and we will modify them to be AIP friendly. And we're so lucky that there are many AIP coaches who have contributed to the Pinterest boards where you can find recipes for AIP chicken, pizzas, pasta dishes, tacos, waffles, like anything you can really think of, there is an AIP version. But it does take an open mind that it's not going to taste or have the exact same texture as what you're used to. But the good news is our taste buds do change over time and we can learn to like different foods. But with that being said, don't force yourself to eat something that really turns you off. That's not something that's going to help you stay on track. Rather, find ways to incorporate different foods and try different recipes as you go. I know a big one or a big theme is like the organ meats and getting those into your diet. Start slow, start small, and don't pressure yourself. And finally, number 5 here is to treat yourself. What are you excited to eat? Maybe it is root vegetable chips, meat jerky, a homemade AIP baked goods, coconut ice cream. What is it that would get you excited about food again? Or maybe you can think beyond food. And if you're going to an event, perhaps you get yourself a mani-pedi or you buy a new outfit or you go to a yoga class or a massage. These are all different ways of treating ourselves that go outside of food. So moving on to lifestyle, I'm not going to do a huge deep dive into lifestyle today, but I think that something worth mentioning is boundaries, knowing our own personal boundaries. So for example, what time will you leave a party to ensure that you get home and get enough rest? Or if somebody asks you how you're doing, how your health is, what are you comfortable talking about? What are you willing to talk about? And what are you not willing to talk about? And also being okay with saying no if something just doesn't feel right. If you don't need to feel pressure to attend something if you're not well, or if you really want to focus on your health right now. And this will become easier as I dive into mindset next. And of course, checking in with yourself before you go. How are you feeling about this upcoming event? Is anything coming up for you? Do you have any level of stress? And if you do, what can you do to manage that stress? Some things that come to mind for me are meditation. I like to use essential oils. I have one, I think it's by Sage, Peppermint Halo. I will literally just put a little dab on the tip of my nose and I can just smell it and it calms me down. I also like music to get me into the mood, depending on where I'm going. Maybe it's something more upbeat. And I like to use visualization or mental rehearsal. And on the PDF handout, I have provided the 10 steps for doing a visualization or a mental rehearsal. But you can also find free YouTube videos where it's more of a guided meditation to get you to go through that process. Okay, so the biggie, this is mindset. And I just want to quickly review what mindset is, because the term gets thrown around so much now that we can kind of lose sight of what it actually is. But it is very simple. Mindset is the way that we think about things. And the way that we think about something impacts the way that we feel. And when we decide to update our thoughts to ones that make us feel good, and we are able to feel those positive vibes in our body, then we are compelled to take actions that are in our best interest. And the outcome is that we begin to see the results that we want in our health and in our life. When we start taking action toward improving our health, it often means doing things differently than the people around us. And this can lead to thoughts like, I'm missing out, people don't understand what I'm going through, this is so hard, what's the point? People are judging me. And I want you to just start to begin to notice these thoughts as they come to mind automatically. These are called our default thoughts. And we think them so often that we don't even really recognize that we're thinking them anymore until we take a moment and actually stop to realize that. So changing or updating our mindset begins with becoming aware of our default thoughts and replacing them with intentional thoughts. So it involves taking the time to ask yourself, what thoughts are going through my head right now? Like if you have an upcoming event, take a moment. What's going through my head right now? What are the thoughts that I'm thinking about this event? How are these thoughts making me feel? How do I actually want to feel? And what can I think instead so that I can move into alignment with how I want to feel? And this is really about choosing thoughts that are conducive to your success on AIP or just in life in general. So with AIP, some thoughts that come to mind for me are, I'm choosing rather than I have to. I am choosing to eat in a way that makes my body feel good because it is a choice. I enjoy eating foods that nourish my body. I am an example of what's possible. And this is one that I really adopted when I was feeling judged by the people around me for being picky, being a princess, always needing modifications, whatever those judgments were, they were my own thoughts. People weren't saying this to me. I was making this up in my head that these are the things people were thinking about me. And I chose to change it to, I am an example of what's possible. And another one is, my friends and my family love me and they respect my needs and boundaries. When our minds are well managed, it's easier to stay on track with AIP. It's easier to be assertive, ask for what we need, and to prioritize ourselves. And it's also worth noting that it's best not to judge others for what they are doing. Because oftentimes when we start to improve our health, we start to notice all of the habits of other people. But we need to keep in mind that their goals and desires are not the same as ours. And until they have their own internal desires, they're not going to do what we're doing. And the flip side of that is to not, like I was doing, making things up about what they thought about me. Don't decide what somebody else is thinking about you. And if you are going to go that route, make it be something that benefits you, something positive. So just to wrap up with mindset, it all begins with our minds. If we're confident in what we are doing with AIP, we know that it's best for our body, then it's easier to stay on track. If we're doubting why we're doing this, whether or not it will work, then we need to take a step back and answer those questions for ourselves and begin to build the belief and the confidence that what we're doing is best for us right now. And my firm belief that the way that I'm living well with multiple autoimmune conditions is my approach to diet, but it's coupled with mindset. And I would say at this point in my journey, mindset and spirituality are trumping diet. I still follow a modified AIP diet, but I don't put all my eggs in that basket. My expertise and my passion goes beyond talking about the AIP diet, as you may have noticed today. Helping my clients nurture a positive mindset so they can thrive despite having a chronic condition is what I love to do. Because we can master a diet, but life has ups and downs. And what I've noticed, I have Hashimoto's and I have a thyroid, an enlarged thyroid gland that can be quite uncomfortable when it flares. I have noticed that I always want to blame my flares on diet. But when I take a moment and I step back and I think about my life circumstances and what's really going on, I can see that diet is one part of it. And most of the time when I have a flare, I can usually relate it to not having a good sleep, having some stress going on with my family or my kids. And these are things that we really need to consider before we get ultimately so anal and strict with our diet for long periods of time. So I want to invite anybody who is feeling like they can use some support in this type of area to a complimentary consultation with me, where you can really take the time to step back and maybe notice some of those default thoughts that you're not taking the time out of your day in a normal busy day to notice. It's a place where you can develop an understanding of where you want to be when it comes to your health and a simple and clear path forward, which might surprise you because it might not be completely diet focused.